Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tisha B'Av today. We commemorate and mourn the destruction of the two Jewish temples in the holy city of Jerusalem, one 586 BCE, and another one approximately a little less than 500 years later than that. One by the Babylons, by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and the other by Vespasian and Rome 500 years later. Last night we were sitting here and we had Eicha, and we sat outside in the backyard and we read Lamentations from Jeremiah, those haunting words, the haunting melody, the power of mourning together. And then when I came back in to my house, Bernie showed me a notice that was going on Facebook about a MTBA bus stop in Brookline, right in front of Or Shalom, where there was, at the bus stop where they hang the signs, there was this anti-Semitic, anti-Israel sign about Israel apartheid and connecting it to President Trump and trying to use the two together to fight Israel. And it was bothering me because, of course, we're in Brookline, and Brookline is a place where so many Jews live, and it's a place where we've always supported Israel and supported the Jewish people. And I shared it on Facebook, and sure enough, we found out that it actually wasn't done by the MTBA. It was a sabotage, and there was only two of them, and the MTBA took down one of them and was going to take down the next one. Little more comforting. Then today in the morning, I opened up the news, and I saw on the Israeli website that one of the executives of Twitter testified in front of Congress. And they were asked about, Twitter is starting to not allow hate there and taking down people's things, or if there's things that are untrue. And they asked, what about Khamenei, the leader of Iran, that keeps on advocating and threatening the destruction of Israel, the annihilation of Israel. And the executive said that they consider that foreign leader political sable ratting. That's it. And therefore they leave it on. It's not considered threats. It's not considered something that they would take off. Shocking to me. Here they are. Every word someone says, they're worried if it's true, if it's not true. When it comes to someone threatening the entire country of Israel, they consider it political banter. And the same happened with, what's his name, Grime from London, who was spewing anti-Semitism on Twitter. Twitter didn't take it down right away. And then, when they did take it down, they only suspended him temporarily and eventually suspended him. And it's a concern we have. You think about it, it's Tisha B'Av today. We're commemorating, we're mourning the destruction of two temples. We're mourning the Cossacks, the pogroms, Khmelnytsky, the Holocaust, the Crusades. So much anti-Semitism. And yet, it always rears its head again. And what's worrying me even more is, you always wonder how you get people like that are so anti-Israel and anti-Jewish in Congress, and you say, look, the way the congressional seats go, it could be dictated by a few hundred seats, and you don't know where they're from, and they could be in a small area, and who knows who the people are there. But we have something very worrisome happening right here in the 4th Congressional District. We have a woman that's running for Congress to take over Joe Kennedy's seat. Her name is Lecky. She's a Moroccan immigrant who is blatantly and vehemently anti-Israel, supports BDS, has made a lot of questionable comments, and in fact said she doesn't care to be called an anti-Semite, is supported by Omar Ilhan, by Justice for Peace, and other very, very anti-Semitic organizations. And because she's running in a primary where there's 6 other pro-Israel and many Jewish candidates running, there's the possibility that she could, heaven forbid, win. Her husband loaned $700,000 or $1 million to her campaign. The vote is in 1 month from now. It's a Labor Day weekend. It's a primary. People aren't interested. And the vote could be decided by less than 100 votes. Imagine we'll be living in a 4th congressional district that's full of Jewish people who love Israel and people in general who love Israel, who care about the bond between America and Israel and recognize how Israel's fraught with danger and is only trying to do its best to support itself. And yet we might end up with a congressman, heaven forbid, who literally hates Israel and is anti-Semitic. And how could we let that go? So the thing is, of course, we all have to be proactive. And when we see a sign, a billboard in Brookline that's anti-Semitic and anti-Israel, we have to voice our concerns. We have to call MTBA. We have to call the company that does it. We have to stand up and speak up. We can't be bullied and pushed into a corner by people who shout louder than us and try a dangerous cancer culture against anyone who doesn't think their way. Secondly, same thing as with Congress. We have to be active. And if we realize that there's only 1 or 2 candidates who have a chance of winning, we have to plead with the other candidates, even for their best interest of them, for the Jewish people, for America, for our congressional seat, to bow out so we can get rid of this bigot. And of course, when it comes to Twitter and we see someone like Grimes say something so insulting and so anti-Semitic, and we see Twitter not reacting quick enough, we have to be quiet. We can't be quiet. And you know, the chief rabbi of Israel and many actors, and chief rabbi of Great Britain and many Jewish actors and politicians made a 2-day boycott of Twitter to let ourselves be heard. And the same is, of course, true with everything. But I want to tell you something about the destruction of the temple, which is as equally as important. And the story is of the great Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai. Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai was the greatest sage and the leader of the Jewish people in the time of the destruction of the Second Temple through the Romans. And I just watched a YouTube video, and I recommend that anyone that understands Hebrew, and even if not, it is by a company, by an organization, is called Migalim. And it's a 10-minute YouTube video, which is just fascinating and gives you the details and literally replays the destruction of the Second Temple by Vespasian and the terror, the 1 million people that he murdered, and how brave the Jews were to try to stand up. And there's another one that gives you the whole destruction of the First Temple through the Babylonians. It was amazing to watch. It was fascinating, very painful, but very fascinating to see it that vividly. But what happened was, when Vespasian decided to destroy the temple, and the Romans did for years already, and they had their plan, they came and they laid siege on Jerusalem. They realized they couldn't get in. The walls of Jerusalem were protecting Israel, the temple, very, very well, and they couldn't get in. So what they did was, he laid a full siege, and since the fields and the food that Israel got came from outside of Israel, and the water and everything else, there would be no choice. But eventually, they would have to give up. Now, there were 2 factions, like always, amongst the Jewish people. There were the Zealots, who wanted to fight the Romans and wanted no piece of any negotiations, or maybe try to offer them some negotiations where they would live in some sort of their own rule, but under Rome, but they wanted none of it. And then there was the pragmatics, who realized that there's no way the Jews could overcome the obstacle of Rome, and if they wanted to survive, they had to try to negotiate and see if they could come to some terms with Rome. So what did the Zealots do? The rabbis say, and the Talmud tells us, that in Israel, in Jerusalem, there were wealthy Jews who had enough food, storehouse, and water to support Israel for 3 years or something crazy like that, that everyone in Jerusalem would be able to eat and drink. What they did was, these Zealots, they went and they burned down the food houses, the storage houses, and they destroyed all the food, that the Jews should have no food and have to be forced to fight with the Romans. Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai, who was the greatest leader of the Jewish people at that point, really wanted to get to meet Vespasian, and he felt that maybe he could impress on Vespasian and the pain will be less. It was already late in the game, and Vespasian was hooked on destroying the Holy Temple, but he thought maybe if he could get out. But how could he get out? They would kill him. They didn't want negotiations. The Zealots were watching the gates. So Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai had a nephew who was one of the Zealots, and together they devised a plan where they said Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai became sick, And slowly rumor got out that he died, and tradition is you don't bury anyone in the city, in the old city of Jerusalem. So they had to take him out on a coffin to bring him out. He faked his death, and when they actually brought him to the gates, the Zealots wanted to stab him to check that he was dead. And the nephew convinced them that it's not respectful for such a great sage that they should do it, and they let him out. And Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai came face to face, and he met Vespasian. And Vespasian was very impressed by Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai. And Vespasian said, tell me what you want. He asked him for three wishes that he would give. And there's a whole discussion in the Talmud. He asked for three things, but one of the main things he asked for was for the city of Beitar. For the city of Yavne. Tenli Yavne v'chachomel. Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai, the leader of the Jews, looked at Vespasian and says, give me Yavne. What was Yavne? Yavne was the city of Torah, the city of halachic authority, the city of yeshivas, the city where the study of Torah was thriving like nowhere else. It was the home of all the intellectual and halachic aspects of Judaism. And Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai said, listen, you're going to destroy Jerusalem, you're going to destroy the temple. Give me that city, don't destroy it. Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai came back. Vespasian went on, unfortunately, to break through the walls on the 17th of Tammuz and to literally destroy the temple on Tisha B'Av and to butcher 1 million Jews in the most gruesome way. And if you watch the video, you'll understand what went on there and how much the Jews tried to fight. And then he didn't destroy. The rabbis ridiculed Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai. Many of the rabbis said, Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai, are you crazy? You asked him not to destroy Yavne? Who cares? You could have asked him not to destroy Jerusalem. Maybe he would have let the temple stay. Yavne? And this is something that tormented Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai till the day he passed away. In fact, right when Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai was about to pass away, and his students were surrounding him, he says, I don't know which way they're going to send me. To heaven, or heaven forbid, to the Garden of Eden, or heaven forbid, to hell. And all the commenters say, what kind of ridiculous statement was this? Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai, the greatest sage of the Jewish people, doesn't know where he's going? And the rabbis say that Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai was tormented with his decision that he had to make on the spot. When Vespasian asked Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai, what do you want? Give me something and I'll grant it. And he wasn't sure what to ask, and he asked for Yavne. It tormented him for the rest of his life. Maybe his colleagues were right. Maybe he should have asked for Yerushalayim. Maybe he should have asked for the temple. So you see, the thing is like this. Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai was passing away at a time of the greatest destruction for the Jewish people, of tremendous pain and suffering and exile. And he didn't know what the outcome would be. But we're living 2,000 years later than Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai. And we have the hindsight, the 20/20 vision on every meaning of it, that Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai did not have. 2,000 years ago, Rome was the most powerful, brutal empire. The Colosseums. You go see what Rome was. You go to visit today and you see what they were back then. They were the mightiest people. You see the Shar Titos, and you see the gate of Titos where there's the arch where they have them marching back with all the things they took from the Holy Temple, the menorah, etc., etc., the Shulchan. You look back then, Rome had every future. Rome was the future, the present. The Jewish people, their temple was just destroyed. There was nothing left to them. What did it help that they had Yavne? So they had Torah study. They had some scholars sitting over books. But what did it help? But when you look 2,000 years later, today, where's Rome? Where's Vespasian? Where's Titus? Where's their philosophy? Where's their empire? Where's their power? Where's their strength? Where's their vision? Where's their philosophy? It's buried. You see it on the Arch of Titus. It's all in memory. But when you look at the Jewish people, through all our struggles that we've suffered then and since then, you see a Jewish people that's thriving. You see a Talmud that's studied till today. In every corner of the world, people are studying Talmud. You see, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av comes, and hundreds of thousands, millions of Jews throughout the world sit on the floor and read Lamentations from Jeremiah, which is from the first destruction of the temple. You see, Israel, where nearly 7 million Jews live and celebrate Judaism, we understand how right Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai was. We understand the vision, the foresight, the courage, the strength that Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai had to say, Ten li yavne v'chachomer. I recognize Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai calculated that if he asked for Jerusalem, Vespasian would say no. Vespasian was set on destroying Jerusalem and the temple. He was upset of the Zealots and of them not agreeing to come under his rule. There was no hope. But he recognized that if he wants a survival for the Jewish people, if he wants a survival for Israel, for Eretz Yisrael, for the Jewish people, that wherever they go in exile, they should thrive and yearn to come back to Israel. And one day they would. He recognized you needed Torah. You needed the ideas. You needed the philosophy. You needed the Chumash. You needed the Bible. You needed the prophets. You needed the scriptures. You needed the Talmud. You needed the Mishnah. You needed the Rishonim, the Achronim, Abaya, Rava, Rabbi Akiva. And that's why he asked them to save Yavne v'chachomer. Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakai was a humble person. And when he passed away, he was unsure, he says, which way he was going. But today, 2,000 years, we have no doubt. And why do I say this? Because it's Tisha B'Av today. In the last 24 hours, it was really bothering me. When I thought about what I saw on the bus stop, what I heard from one of the executives at Twitter about Khamenei calling for the destruction and annihilation of Israel, that it's just sable-ratting politics. When I think and fathom that it could be that we could get a congressman in our state, in our district, that could hate Israel and hate the Jewish people, and some Jews might innocently, heaven forbid, naively vote for her. It worries me. And I stay active. And we all have to. And we have to speak on social media. And we have to call our politicians. And we have to fight for people. We have to donate to candidates if we could. And if we donate for political candidates, to the ones that have a chance to make it. And we have to plead with the other ones to bow out of the race. But we also have to recognize what Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai taught us. If you worry about the future of Judaism, don't worry. Be engaged with Torah, with its insight, with its philosophy, with its depth, with its spirituality, with its meditation, with its holiness, with its transcendental nature above and beyond the physical and material, which is vision on monotheism, on social justice, on morality, on ethics. And that's what I plead with you. That on this day of Tisha B'Av, as we mourn the destruction of the temple, yet we recognize, as the Talmud tells us, that the day the temple was destroyed, the Messiah was born. The potential for redemption, for greater rebuilding, for taking those cracks and those sufferings and challenges and rebuilding it is there. Excuse me. It's within the reach of every single one of us. And it's our power to recognize what Reb Yochanan Ben Zakai did. And alongside our working in politics and in social media and fighting in the trenches, we have to embrace the Torah of God, that's the only truth in the world, the Torah of the Jewish people that's 3,300 years old, and yet so new, and so modern, and yet so relevant, and yet the bestseller in the history of the world. My friends, Am Yisrael Chai. We know the Jewish people will survive. But we can never forget Jerusalem, our allegiance and our alliance with it, our fighting for it in the trenches and in the books of Talmud, and celebrating Shabbos and wrapping tefillin and lighting Shabbos candles and giving our kids Jewish education and nurturing them with the deep sense of love and pride and joy in their Judaism. Love you guys all. Have an easy rest of the fast. We'll be doing Mincha and Ma'ariv tonight with tefillin. We don't put on tefillin in the morning, we put it on in the evening at 7:30 right here where I'm sitting. And we'll have services on Shabbos at 10:30. We had a baby naming last week. This week we'll be blessing a new baby boy, Mazel tov to Josh and Hannah Ganje on the birth of another baby. What a great celebration as we continue creating and bringing into this world more souls that are going to bring Judaism and holiness to this world. Have a great day.